Today's episode is being broadcast in 320 megabits per second to preserve How Did This Get Made's creative vision. We saw Zack Snyder's Justice League, so you know what that means.
Now it's time for How Did This Get Made? We're gonna have a good time, celebrate some failure, not just be a hater, cause you know you wonder, how did this get made? Let's wallow in the mediocrity of subpar art. Perhaps we'll find the answer to the question, how did this get made?
Hello, people of Earth. I have gone by many names. Some have called me Martian Manhunter. Others call me Tall John Shear. Welcome to How Did This Get Made? And hold on to your mother boxes. Today we are talking about Zack Snyder's The Justice League. It's an epic. Consider it Bat-Her, Return of the Superman. Here's the premise. Batman and Wonder Woman team up with The Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg to protect the Earth from an evil that threatens to eradicate life on the planet. In doing so, they must revive Superman, and it all ends in Russia. Now, that's the plot. Now, if you're wondering what is Zack Snyder's Justice League, let me explain it as quickly as I can possibly do it. Zack Snyder, he had planned on a 5-film series in the DC universe. That's Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, a Justice League trilogy. But because of Batman vs. Superman and Suicide Squad not really working, people being upset with it, they decided they would bring in somebody to make it a little bit lighter, a little bit more fun. So they brought in Chris Terrio, who is responsible for Rise of Skywalker as well as Argo. They shoot the movie, they finish it. They're like, okay, this is pretty good. 90% complete. Warner Brothers watches it. They say, this is unwatchable. They hire Joss Whedon to come in and rewrite the script and help with the reshoots. During this time, Zack Snyder suffers a terrible family tragedy. He leaves the project. Joss Whedon then gets full control of the production. He adds 80 pages to the script, only uses 10% of Snyder's original footage, changes the score, and the movie comes out. And basically, people are like, at best, it's a Frankenstein movie. It's just incongruous tones. People don't really love it at all. The movie kind of tanks. They go away from the franchises. They go into these individual films. And then online, this growing movement of release the Snyder Cut comes out. It seems like a joke. It seems like this is never going to happen. They get 180,000 signatures on some virtual petition. And all of a sudden, in 2019, we hear that it's happening. The Snyder Cut is happening. It initially is going to involve some reshoots. It's going to cost about $30 million to finish. Zack Snyder comes in. He adds 5 minutes or less of new footage. And the budget is now at $70 million to complete the film. That is what we watched. 4 hours and 2 minutes of a film that was 90% complete via, not including VFX shots. So this is the version, and this is what we're going to get into today. And there's no better person, and there's no better people to talk about this with today than our guests, but also my co-host. Please welcome Jason Mantzoukas.
Paul, wow. This was wild. This has been a wild journey to watch as you said, like the progression of Zack Snyder's larger DCEU, the creation of it as it's been going. I have not enjoyed it as it's been going along. I was a Marvel kid, not a DC kid.
Same.
But I'm fully open to DC movies. I liked the Richard Donner Superman rather. I enjoyed Nolan's Batman.
Same.
But these movies, Man of Steel, and then just in preparation for this is the nightmare that I've decided to live in. In preparation for this conversation, I have watched the Batman v Superman extended cut that is 3 hours long.
A mistake.
And is like, it might as well be a concrete brutalist piece of architecture. It is so insane. And then I watched Whedon's cut, and I watched the Snyder Cut.
I did that. So
we are for those of you complaining that you just watched the Snyder Cut, fuck you. I watched all of it.
I did too, and I'm excited to talk to you. And
I've got takes. I've got takes for days. Bring these guests. Let's do this.
I cannot wait. This is going to probably be a different episode. I have a feeling it's going to be a different episode.
I suspect it is.
And never have I been so thankful that June Diane Raphael is out of town and unable to record, because we would never have a chance to do this episode. She would not stand for it, and rightly so. Rightly so.
I don't think she would even let you watch this movie at home.
I don't believe so. Yes. So
doesn't she have parental blocks on certain channels for you?
She does it on my computer and on my phone. I can only watch YouTube Kids. Look, I will say that my history with June and superhero movies is
I've been banned from YouTube Kids.
The only... Well, that's just because you make those weird, like... those weird Mario walkthrough videos. All right, so yes, June's the only two superhero movies I think June has seen. Well, definitely Wonder Woman, definitely Ant-Man, and she fell asleep during Guardians of the Galaxy 1. That's where I know where she's at. So this would really be a tricky one for her to get into. But we have decided to cross over, share the space with one of our favorite podcasts. I'm going to introduce them both individually, but talk about their podcast first of all. You know them as together as the hosts of Blank Check, which reviews directors' complete filmographies, episode to episode, specifically auteurs whose early successes afforded them a rare blank check from Hollywood to produce passion projects. Each new miniseries kind of breaks them down, gets into great detail. Right now, they're doing this amazing bracket, directors against directors going up against each other, which is just fantastic, but individually.
Individually, they are also hashtag the two friends.
Yes, they are.
Don't worry. They are also hashtag the two friends. And let's not forget that sometimes, those checks, they cash and sometimes they bounce, baby.
Please welcome our first guest, Griffin Newman. You know him as Arthur on The Tick or Watto on the George Lucas Talk Show. He also lends his voice to the upcoming Masters of the Universe Revelation on Netflix. Griffin, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Jason was throwing down his bona fides for how deep he had gone into Snyder in the last week. I did all of that plus Man of Steel and Dawn of the Dead. So I feel like I spent. Dead? Yeah, I want to go back to the beginning. I want to go back to the beginning.
Yeah, you got to see the whole thing. All right, and our next co-host for today's show, also a host of Blank Check. Please welcome David Sims. He's a film critic at The Atlantic, and his interview with Chloe Zhao is excellent. If you have not read that, she directed No Man Land. So please welcome David Sims. How are you, David?
Thank you. I'm doing well. It was fun. I feel like Chloe and I mostly talked about her dogs. We kept swinging back around to her dogs in that interview. That's what I remember most. I would like to say that I watched the Snyder Cut, and then I said to my wife, like, maybe I throw on the Joss Whedon version, like, because I only saw it once, and she was like, I don't want you to do that. And so all I did was I watched the Snyder Cut. But I saw it all before. I've seen all this stuff.
We should say that David has a 1-month-old, so the fact that you were able to even steal 4 hours to watch this is impressive.
We pulled you out of paternity leave, and we appreciate you doing this, and it's something that we are excited to have you here. I want to, before we even get into this film, is there any hot takes on where you rank like the DC universe? I'm opening up to everybody. Jason, I know we talked about you already, more of a Marvel guy as I.
I have not enjoyed the Marvel. I've not rather enjoyed the DC movies almost at all. They have been I would say largely for me, with the single exception of Wonder Woman 1, they have been unexceptional, uninteresting, and kind of overwhelmed by this Zack Snyder gloom.
I'm going to disagree with you right off the bat and say Aquaman.
Shazam is fun. Shazam is fun.
Aquaman,
actually, let me amend
Birds of Prey, and Shazam are all.
Those are movies to me that are good in comparison to these other terrible movies, but none of them I think would I put up against Thor Ragnarok.
Well, that's a why?
Well, why can't they do a Thor? Why can't they get there?
Because that's like we're still in the beginning. We're not in the 10-year anniversary yet. I mean, Thor Ragnarok came out after the 10 years.
But DC's acting like they're not at the beginning. That's my problem. DC is like drowning the marketplace with stuff. Like, and we can get into it, but I mean, my hottest of hot takes is, and I hate to say this because I believe that the only reason we have the Snyder Cut is because of toxic fandom, and because toxic fandom was rewarded, which is now only going to embolden toxic fans. Because toxic fandom was rewarded, we got the Snyder Cut, and I'm here to say the Snyder Cut is a better version of the movie Justice League, full stop.
Yes,
far
100%.
better. Yes.
Yeah.
Far better. Well,
far better. I mean, it's also 4 hours long and has like multiple moments of like minutes long exposition dumps, but nonetheless,
I'm in.
I want to at least.
I want to break it down, but I want to hear where you guys stand, Dave and Griffin, about on just the DCU, where you're at. What do you feel? What do you like? What don't you like?
Before we get into this, I just want to state that we had sort of fallen in backwards into sort of doing an ersatz DC Universe miniseries on our podcast, even though we don't really like do franchises like that. And it was because of the weirdness of the fact that Warner Brothers seemed to be handing the whole thing over to Snyder, you know? Like we're very much about like director visions, and the weirdness of, Marvel is so managed. It's Feige, he has control, he hands it to different people, everything has to fit in together. And DC went like, everyone reverse engineer your movies from the template that Snyder has set out. Was fascinating to us. So we did BVS. We thought that was going to be a one-off. Then when Suicide Squad came out so weird, we were like, I guess we have to do this. And that set us on the track. And we've been trying to move away from doing it because it does feel like DC has diversified more. The films are becoming more individual, more separate from each other. You know, it's like we don't need to cover them all as if they're one thing. And I had been pushing, knowing that David was going to go on to a months-long paternity break. We have to do Snyder Cut in some way. And David would just go, no. Immediately, I get 5 words into, but what if we, no, absolutely not. I'm not taking time. I'm not.
They announced, I figured this was coming in like May. Remember, this thing kind of just came out. I mean, obviously we knew it was coming, but then they suddenly were just like, it's coming out mid-March. Like it's just going to drop. Like I thought it was coming in the summer. They announced it's coming like 3 weeks after my daughter's birth. I'm like, I absolutely will not watch a 4-hour movie. What I think I didn't realize was newborn babies are very demanding, but they are very immobile. So you are actually kind of watching a lot of TV.
It's the best time because they don't they require a lot, but also not so much. It's like you are grounded. Yeah, you are grounded. You are grounded, and you are working. But there's a simplicity to it. Once they start moving, it's a whole nother ball game. Yeah.
Wait, so are you saying your baby's first movie experience was the Snyder Cut?
No, because my baby's I'm watching a lot of movies right now, but one of my baby's first movie experiences was the Snyder Cut. Certainly.
That's
2-week-old baby. She started hiccuping about 2 hours into it, and there was like an hour of
What if your baby's first world is Mama Box? Mama Box?
Yeah, she calls my wife Martha for some reason. I should. The Martha dig is so easy. I shouldn't do it.
It's good.
Yeah,
it's good.
I know. Look, I remember seeing Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice at the press screening. I was sitting with a bunch of critics. If you guys remember, there's a scene in that movie where the Flash emerges into a dream that Bruce Wayne is having and yells stuff at him. Do you guys remember what I'm talking about?
Oh, no, I'm early. I'm too early.
Right. And it's a scene that is dropped in without explanation. And yes, we're all smart enough to know, like, this is probably some, larger universe play, that scene. But it is unexplained. And we all burst out laughing. Like, that's how we felt in 2016. Just all these critics, I remember just sitting in a row, we watched this, we're like, what does this thing think it is? Like, what is it doing? And I'm thinking 5 years from now, I'm not going to call it turnaround, but the sort of evolution I have made on Zack Snyder's whole sincere deal with this DC universe is surprising to me.
Yep.
That's
Agree.
all. That's how I'll put it.
A good friend of mine last night, who is a very big comic book fan, reached out to me and he's like, "What did you think of the Snyder Cut?" And I said, "I think he only should make 4-hour-long movies because there was something about this movie that felt like, oh, this is the most complete version of this director that I've ever seen." And I was there for it. I feel like the way he cut it up was like, it recognized that, okay, you could watch it in parts. I don't know. There was something about the way that this movie gelled that worked for me. Like sure, there's things to make fun of or whatever, but
Yes.
there is something that really works here. And I was impressed.
It is just, especially if you watch it in juxtaposition with the Joss Whedon cut or actually with Batman v Superman, it is simply more cohesive, more interesting, more successfully plotted. You know, like this, the Justice League movie is confoundingly plotted. Right? In the release cut, in the theatrical cut, right? The theatrical cut was like truly 2 hours of nonsense. Like it really was.
The Russian family, like even like
the populated Russian town, that Steppenwolf is the single bad guy. In 2 hours, they're trying to build a team, fight a world building evil, resurrect
Introduce
Superman.
3 heroes.
Right.
Resurrect-
Three of them have essentially not been in movies before.
Yes, origin story characters who they just simply don't. They just show up and are now there.
Cyborg might be one of my favorite characters now. Like, literally.
Here's how much I enjoyed the Snyder Cut. To a degree, I was like, the minute it started, my first note is, fuck you, it's in 4:3.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck you.
Yeah.
How dare you make me watch a different aspect ratio? 20 minutes later, I'm like, I don't care. I don't care that it's in 4:3. This is infinitely better at explaining what's happening to me and tonally consistent throughout, which the score helped, which his editing helped. I don't know, like it just
I stopped
worked
taking
better.
notes. I stopped taking notes because like I'm here. I'm in. Like every now and then I might jot down one thing, but I was like, you have pulled me into a world, and now I also get like people like, oh, it's CGI and slow-mo, but it felt like I was going over to someone's house to have a meal that I'd never had before, right? Like, yes, there are a lot of things that I may not have picked myself. There are a lot of things that may not even be my favorite thing. But in being presented in a loving way, I was open to trying everything there. And I found myself liking it more than I ever thought I would have. Like,
Okay, I need to share my hottest take.
Okay.
That
my
I've been
God.
sitting on. And I feel
the kid Griffin Newman coming in.
I'm overflowing with hot take. Already we're touched on so many things that I'm just like champing at the bit to
please just interrupt
to
us.
spin off.
Champ
But
away, my
I will
friend.
say right off the bat, because you were asking for a previous history, David and I are much like you guys. We're more Marvel zombies than DC fans. I think I like DC a little more than David does. Like, I actually read more DC comics, I think, at our comic reading peak than you, because you never really read DC titles at all, right?
Only stuff like when Grant Morrison did All-Star Superman. You know, when people would come in and have like some sort of like contained take. But anytime I tried to swoop in and be like, you know what, I'm going to read all the Batman titles, I would tap out really fast because I was just like, I can't, you know, like reading comic books, if you really want to do it, it's very time consuming. You got a lot of shit to keep up with. And so
God.
like Marvel was always as
David,
much as
are you
I could
okay?
handle.
You seem overwhelmed by the concept of reading comic books.
As a child,
It's too much.
without a
too
cell
much.
phone, I imagine, or internet.
I mean, I'm just imagining you as a young boy on the streets of New York City, going into the comic shop to buy your comics. I have no reason
Waving
to
his
believe-
arms around. There are too many titles.
There's
How am I
too
supposed to
many
keep up with
titles.
this?
I'm just a young boy living in New York City.
I know where you're going, Jason, but I was a young boy in New York City. I did go to the comic shop until 9 years of age, and then I went to the comic shop in London. Where I lived.
And then you were like, whoa, give me that Judge Dredd. You're like, give me those
Captain
English.
Britain.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't wait to read Dennis the Menace, but the different one.
I did read the Beano. I forget if we've talked about this on my podcast, Griffin. Anyway, Griffin, can you have a take? Griffin,
yes,
what's your take?
so I was just gonna say I was less of a DC guy, but the three titles I read semi regularly and kept up with the universes of were Flash, Batman, and Teen Titans. So like 3 members of this team essentially comprise the only things I ever seriously followed in the DC universe, right? I'm ostensibly in the tank for. In terms of my rankings, it was always like Wonder Woman's probably my favorite modern superhero movie, point blank. Like I prefer Wonder Woman to all the MCU movies, I think. But then I put pretty much every other MCU movie in between there. I'd say like Shazam is close to Wonder Woman for me on that tier. And then I like Birds of Prey and Aquaman with some reservations. And then everything else I could pretty much leave behind, right?
I love Aquaman. I'm a huge Aquaman defender.
Thank you, David. Like to me, like I'm as excited to have you on because I also there's something about Aquaman that I will say, and I've talked about this where it is in many respects like what a child would want a superhero movie to be, and I love it. Like I just love it because it's like, let's do that and there's something so pure. And again, like this movie, it's a pure vision, and I think you can like Joker's a whole other story, but I don't mind that when people with pure visions get involved in this, they make their version, and sometimes it really works. And Aquaman for me really worked in that way.
I have to say something before Griffin says his take, just before I lose the thread. I do think with DC, sincerity is crucial. Those heroes are much more sincere. They are these very simple heroes, not in terms of characterization, but just like in terms of what they stand for. Marvel was the second tier, the second guys coming in and, offering more commentary and more grit. But DC, there's purity, like you say. So Wonder Woman, Aquaman, these successful movies, usually they were approaching their material very sincerely. And that's why they succeeded, I would say.
Yes, and I think the difference for me, and I want to make it clear, I like Aquaman just less than David.
Sure, it's so good. I watched it again recently. It's so good.
I think the thing those two movies do really well is embrace all the silliest aspects of the characters that made them feel unadaptable for so long, and put a lot of very earnest appreciation into the sort of pure totemic quality of what they represent, right? Yeah. And I always just was kind of bummed out by the Snyder, like, oh, they hate being heroes. Mm-hmm. This world is so bleak. It's so dark. I mean, it always just kind of felt like Zack Snyder hates superheroes as a concept to me, and like even when he was doing Watchmen and doing press for Watchmen, he kept on saying like, I would never make a Superman movie. I don't get that guy. These are the kinds of heroes I understand. They're like drunk and they're angry and they're bitter and they're washed up, like he kind of framed it that way. And then the fact that he became the architect of this whole universe kind of bummed me out because it is a depressively dark view of this thing. And BVS was kind of like, for me, a real breaking point where I was just like, this is like incoherent to me. Beyond it feeling oppressive, this thing just like makes no sense. It is just confounding on a scene-to-scene basis. And my hottest take is that in my prep week, I watched the ultimate cut and I was like, oh, I get it.
Wow. Okay.
I don't even know if I like it. I don't know if it's a bridge too far to say that, but like talking about what you said, Paul, of like you watch the 4 hours of this and go, maybe he should only make 4-hour movies.
Yeah.
BVS is like incoherent, perplexing 2.5 hours. And you watch the ultimate cut and you're like, this makes sense on its own terms. I understand it. And perhaps you can only let Snyder go full Snyder, and trying to rein him in at all is a recipe for disaster.
Well, that's the mistake that is born out of both of these extended cuts is it illustrates to you that he was the messes that came out. The messes that came out were partially messes because so much had to be extracted to make basically Marvel Phase 1 is 10 movies long to set the stage for, all of these individuals, then bringing them together into teams, then building out. They pop up in each other's movies, little bits here and there. They do a good job of walking you into a constructed world of all of these people and how they're now all going to gel or not gel together. In this sense, they tried to do something similar, but I think Snyder's version of it was, let me just make the movies 3+ hours long and we'll get all of those character introductions. We just won't do it in individual movies. And Warner Brothers was like, no, we need 2-hour movies, man. We need 2-hour movies.
Yeah.
And that's too much. Like,
to me, the fact that 90% of this movie was shot, really, it was, 90% of this movie was done or whatever it was.
Yeah, 100% was shot. It was 90% locked, essentially.
Okay.
Right. It was just
minus
some VFX.
final
Right,
effects. Yeah.
So that, to me, it speaks volumes. Like, oh, he shot a 4-hour movie. Like, there's no version. I guess we're all talking about the same thing. It was like, he made a 4-hour. Like, how do you make this smaller? Like, we saw
impossible.
what it is. You can't.
Right.
Like, he's not writing within the confines of movie making.
No, and this is the most bananas thing to me, which I feel like we need to sort of acknowledge as we get deeper into everything. Obviously, the term everyone used for the Joss Whedon cut was Frankenstein, right?
Right.
It's, if I dare say it, a cyborged version of a movie, right? Where they took this much human and then built all these weird robotics around it, and they're like, this will be normal, right? This thing will not be cursed. But I do think it is important because the framing of this now is he finally got to make his absolute pure vision of the movie, which I don't think is totally accurate, because there are two things, one of which you already said, Paul, which is after the response to BVS, which was largely negative, they were at that point, I think, 6 weeks away from starting filming on Justice League. They were so bullish on it that they were like, we're going right in. And then the response to BVS was bad, even though it made money. But I think they felt like, oh, we can't double down on this. So then they go red alert. Terrio and Snyder rewrite this, make it brighter, change the look of the movie. You have to make this lighter. So there was already an adjustment before Snyder started filming all of the footage that finally made it into this film.
Friends of mine in the press were brought on set for Justice League. They were filming the scene where Batman and the Flash meet, and it's
that's
sort of a
the one
jokey
that they
scene.
push so hard.
Yes. And they were really pushing to the press, and Snyder included. We're like, look, okay, this one's going to be a little lighter. Don't worry. I know Batman versus Superman was a lot. They were trying to sell
Batman versus Superman was so, and this is what it is to be considering if you were to look at these two comics universes, DC and Marvel, unquestionably DC is bright, poppy, Boy Scout ethic, gods. It's gods on Earth. It's it's morality tales. It is a blue sky, with the exception of Batman. And then Marvel exists in the real world. It is real people who have real problems on top of the fact that they are superheroes. Spider-Man is a kid who can't figure it out. He's really struggling. And then he gets superpowers and has to, blah, 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 blah. Okay, now.
I think also for so long, DC had the upper leg on the sort of bug nuts cosmic shit. I feel like Marvel had less success with that, and a lot of the stuff's been reclaimed now, but the Fourth World stuff, but even just Green Lantern, all these things from early on, it was the Marvel heroes were grounded, and DC was able to deal with it's gods, it's aliens, it's interdimensional, it's alternate realities, things that Marvel has now caught up to that DC really nailed first.
When I watch these movies, it's as if the lesson learned was, okay, Nolan's Batman is all of DC. In these movies, there is no real discernible difference between Gotham, Metropolis, and Central City. Genuinely. Central City is, in the Snyder Cut, when you get to have that scene with Iris, which is an incredible introduction for Flash, and the fact that they cut that out is absurd.
Every introduction in this movie is
great.
phenomenal. Like phenomenal.
Is great and 15 minutes long. Both of those things. It's both of those things. But
it's so helpful in understanding and putting this character in context in the team.
Right,
it's
especially
so helpful.
if you're not going to take the time to do a Flash movie first, a Cyborg movie first, an Aquaman movie first. Like, let's admit, another advantage that Snyder Cut has watching it in 2021 is we've seen an Aquaman movie already, right? There's like retroactively heavy lifting done there.
Yeah.
And then it does help that this movie, in the restored version, Flash and Cyborg are the two characters who get the most development and the best introductions and the clearest emotional arcs within the film itself.
And they benefit for the movie benefits for having a better understanding. I mean, without a doubt, way for Cyborg, it's night and day in terms of like how much more you understand about this character's journey and arc comparatively. You know what I mean?
Cyborg is literally the heart of the movie in a way. I mean, but I mean, but it's like, it's the reason why Superman comes back. It is all the emotional, all the true, like, big-hearted moments. It's not between the characters saving the day. It really is about like the sacrifice of Joe Morton, who, look, this guy, we know if he's working in a lab, shit is going to go wrong. I mean, we know this now from Terminator 2 and this.
No, don't have him near any metal men. It's not good.
But on the other hand, how are you Warner Brothers and you look at this cut and you go, first thing that has to go, all the Joe Morton scenes. Like, Joe Morton's in like 2 minutes of Joss Whedon. That guy's fucking money in the bank.
Yeah.
So good.
Here's the thing. Look, hiring Joss Whedon to make a sequel to Batman vs. Superman. Let's say, forget that Justice League. They literally, they make Batman vs. Superman and they're like, Joss Whedon, soup to nuts, make Justice League. That would be a bad decision. That would be a tough thing to pivot. Having him make a movie inside of a movie that was already made is a worse decision. Well, the most insane decision is telling him also, it's got to be 2 hours long, 120 minutes, no more, no less, which has been widely reported. They insisted on for whatever reason.
I will say this, like, there's something, let's just take away the allegations right now and just talk about, like, I'm not trying to separate the artist from the thing. I just want to just talk about it in a pure way and go, I love Joss Whedon and what he did on Buffy. I was a big fan. When I first saw the Avengers, I was like, this is good. It was not my favorite, but it was good. Like, I was like, I like it. I really didn't like Age of Ultron. Sure. And when I saw what the Russo brothers did to Civil War, I was like, oh, that's my Avengers movie. Like, that's how you do a team movie in the Marvel universe that feels like it's got the right tone. My thought was, why do you take the guy who essentially fucks up the team movie in the Marvel universe and then bring him over to fix up your problem in the DC unit? It's like, oh, he's already proven that that's not his strong suit. Like, he messed it up, right? Like,
I'll say this.
Fumbled
like,
the ball.
David and I are definitely Whedon Avengers fans over Russo Avengers fans. But even still, it is very bizarre to hand that to him after Age of Ultron, which had a similarly complicated reaction. To the degree that also Whedon kind of steps away from Marvel, and there's this rejigger. I mean,
he fought with the studio on that one. Whatever. I mean, hiring Whedon was bizarre. Is all I'm saying. Under any circumstance.
Well, it's on multiple levels. It makes just the idea of bringing anyone in to do it is already going to be problematic. But somebody who's so tonally different, is like.
Well, it just speaks to the fact that they were. I think it sounds like Warner's was so panicked. At how hopeless and dour and dark Snyder's worldview was, that they were like, let's bring in, you watch these two, if you watch, and I don't recommend anybody do this ever, if you watch both the Snyder Cut and the Whedon Cut, back to back, you see how there are reshoots that are keeping Snyder Aquaman line and then just reshooting Batman's response line just to be a quip. All Joss does is introduce like Buffy style, Joss Whedon style jokes, quips,
Which aren't
ironic eye
organic to
rolls.
the characters
You're
that are
watching a
established.
script polish, but it's
Right.
in a movie, like
That's
rather
the
than just
bizarre
on
thing.
a page, right?
He's like, an infamous script doctor, and punch-up guy who did that for so long before he had his own success doing his own stuff. And you're like, yes, it feels like you're watching him going through the script page by page and going, what if you added this? What if you added this? But it's like
Something that like Shane Black can do effortlessly for Iron Man 1, and it actually probably cements why Iron Man 1 works, and thus we have the MCU.
Right.
But in this instance, it doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
Proof is in the pudding as far as like Ben Affleck in this movie. Like this Batman in the Snyder Cut I'm like, oh, I like this Batman. Like that other Batman is bizarre. I don't know. I just feel like it's more consistent. It's hard to have an actor do one version of the character and then the rewrite they're not even quips. They're out of the voice. Like I remember one of my friends told me that they did a punch up one time. It was a movie where aliens were in the house of this like young teen star. I forget the name of the movie. I would say it if I remembered it.
Aliens in the Attic.
It might have been Aliens. Yeah. Yes. All right. So, and yes, I think it was. And the idea was that when they shot the movie, the aliens didn't speak any discernible language. And then the studio was like, ooh, we need to now add language, like as if they were speaking the entire time. So everyone had to come in and like generate language around a movie that they was shot to not have them responding to language, which is, an insurmountable feat. But that's kind of what it feels like here, where it's like, well, how can he in one scene be like the Zack Snyder Batman and then another scene be like the Joss Whedon? They're very different characters.
Well, it feels like, with most of like punch-up jobs, they bring people on right before the movie shoots to go, can you make this any funnier, right?
Yeah.
That's the best and cheapest way to do it. You add the jokes in before the cameras start rolling, right?
Yes.
Then the two things that people tend to do after the fact, if a movie isn't working and plot points are messy or you need more jokes or whatever, are how much of this can we fix in editing and ADR, right? Because, we can't change too much of it, or we only have the budget and the schedule to do like 1 week of reshoots. If we could only add 5 scenes, what are the 5 scenes we need to add, or less or more, or whatever, right? And this is like, it's like they handed it to him and he went, well, if I was there on the day, I would have done this, but obviously we can't. And then went like, no, don't pitch anything. We'll fix it in CGI. Like it's like it was an animated movie where he was like, but I can't change that now. And they were like, we can bring Affleck in, put him in front of a green screen. It's a year and a half later. His drinking problems have risen again, but we'll get the one line from him and then edit it into a previous conversation. And you're talking about Batman feeling different than this. Affleck has said like he was supposed to do his solo Batman movie that he wrote and directed right after this. And he stepped down. And the story that he said recently in interviews is he showed the script to a friend and he went, I don't know, do you think I should do this? And they said, I think the script is good. I think you could make a good movie. I think if you go through this Batman thing again, you're literally going to drink yourself to death after what happened on Justice League. And you do feel like there's a very specific performance in BVS, right? And then here is like he's a little bit responding to the negativity of BVS and he's trying to get a little bit lighter, right? Yeah. And then Justice League is the Whedon version is like watching a man who is just dead inside, is regretting this. Why did I do Daredevil again? I won an Oscar. What am I doing here?
I am now an established director. By the way, trusting a guy that he worked with on Argo too. Like you feel like, okay, I've protected myself in every possible way, and now someone pulled the carpet right out from under me and screwed me over.
This is the one other thing I want to say about the weirdness of this not being a complete vision even still, is the plan was Chris Terrio had written 2 complete scripts. There was Justice League Part 1 and Justice League Part 2. They were going to be shot back to back. Right. And with the trepidation after BVS, they went, let's pull the brakes, only do one now, do 2 later. So what we're watching now is the 4-hour cut of what was only supposed to be the first half of a 2-part movie. There's still a whole second half they never got to. And I think in some ways, like the reshoots and some re-editing and effect stuff he's done, he's tried to retrofit some of the stuff he would have done in part 2 into this movie. But like Darkseid was not even supposed to be in this much. I think they added more Darkseid. He was just supposed to be like even less. And then 2 was Darkseid, right? The end of 1 is Steppenwolf reports.
He has kind of talked about there being 3 like movies, but yes. So I think
there were
was
definitely 2 scripts ready to go, though.
Right. They had this back-to-back plan. They also had, like the Riddler was in the Ben Affleck movie, and he was going to like solve the anti-life equation. There was a lot of like track laid that they then dynamited. But the only thing they reshot for this movie with people, obviously.
And it was Jim, to be clear, it was Jim Carrey's Riddler.
Yes, of course. He was back.
Yeah,
he was back.
It was Jim.
Bringing him back.
Yeah.
All the classic Jim Carrey characters coming back in the Warner Brothers canon.
Right. He had the popcorn machine mind reading thing. Yeah.
The epilogue is the major reshoot, right? That's like the only substantiative.
It's the only reshoot. They shot 3 days to do that epilogue. Now they may have added other stuff with CG or whatever. But I think that the
flashback scene is. I think the flashback scene with Darkseid is a reshoot, but because it's not human act, I think it's all CGI.
They did a lot of CGI motion capture stuff with Darkseid and Steppenwolf. Right.
They fully
also
redesigned Steppenwolf. I mean,
they gave him
just on an effects level.
Pants.
Yeah. They redesigned stuff. They made all the and I will say, I liked all of the Darkseid, introducing Darkseid and letting there be a bigger bad than just Steppenwolf and the Parademons was beneficial. It gave context to Steppenwolf and why he's doing what he's doing. Also, like in the Whedon cut, I don't understand what mother boxes are at all. And in this one, in the Snyder Cut, the only reason I mostly do is because Wonder Woman does a 3.5 minute exposition dump to Bruce Wayne. She's like, well, all I can tell is, and then she talks for 3.5 minutes based exclusively, I believe, on cave painting.
Yeah.
I think her knowledge, her minutes worth of knowledge is from looking at like pictographs. I was like,
Themyscira, they understand. They go deep. I mean,
she's an antiquities expert.
Yeah.
By the way, I do want to talk about that. Like, there is something. There are in a good way. There are very funny things in this movie still.
Yes.
Like when she is in that museum wearing what looks to me like an outfit that you might wear on a premiere or something. She's wearing like a very form-fitting, like white, just a gorgeous, like you would see
pristine, clean cut, not the kind of thing you take to work where you restore art, where you got like a chisel and a brush.
And she's not in like there's no smock over it. There's nothing. It's just like, it did make me like, that is an odd choice. That is an odd choice.
He makes odd choices.
I honestly, the thing that most surprised me in terms of when you're watching this, I honestly figured that the Whedon had added in the Wonder Woman museum rescue sequence because that felt so tacked on. And it plays better in this, kind of.
I'm sorry. My biggest surprise, I was 100% certain that Whedon had tacked on the Cyborg and Flash go grave digging and Bond sequence.
Yes.
I could not believe that was in the original cut, and not only that, it's like 12 minutes, and all of them are there.
Few things were surprising, but that was.
I thought that was surprising as well, only because Whedon, with Buffy, has spent so much time in graveyards.
Yeah,
loves
it's like one of his signature settings.
Yes. Yeah, to him, it's like Frasier's recording booth in Frasier. A great, yes.
It's Central Perk. He just thought this is a good
Central Perk
set to have some characters share funny quips.
Gunter was in there.
Gunter was in. He's in Snyder. That's in the Snyder cut. That's what's so weird. Gunter is just
CGI.
There in the graveyard. He is CGI.
All fully CGI.
Right.
But because we've talked a lot about the movie, like the general sense of the movie. Let's talk about this epilogue, because that is the new footage. Like that is this, I think what you're talking about, this idea of like, this is throwing towards the overall vision. I think that there's a couple moves here that he is basically going like, this is what we were going to do. And now suck it. Like, like I think that like, or maybe making a play to be like, let me take the Justice League in my own world, and now I will exist separately from this, and let me go make my things. And I think he should make them exclusively for HBO Max. But that ending, I'm going to go in the most suspect of Jared Leto being in this ending as the Joker. I'm going to go in, and I got to say, I was like, am I, is it 4 hours and 2 minutes? Like, am I 3 hours and 50 minutes in and going, am I worn down? But I kind of like
Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah, but I like this. I like the scene. I like the scene between Batman and Joker. Okay, let's, talk to me about this.
I just want to say this, and then I want to hear Griffin's take on this.
This is the second to last ending in the movie, right?
Yes.
Right. The movie
so we're talking, I believe is it called Nightfall?
It's the Nightmare with a K.
Nightmare?
Nightmare
with a K.
Yes.
Nightmare. It's the epilogue. Now, because the movie ends, it fully ends. You see every hero, has rediscovered their sense of purpose. You see the Flash running. You see Superman opening his shirt, right? Like, it's
everyone's
the ending.
happy.
And then it's like, and 20 more minutes, and whereas like, I do think the movie would be better as a movie if it actually ended at the ending, at Superman opening his shirt. The epilogue feels, like you say, more like Snyder kind of being like, and look, here's a bunch of stuff I had planned.
Right.
Yeah. Interested?
His big picture plan was, like, by all accounts, movie 1 was Steppenwolf, right? Teeing up movie 2, Darkseid. That's the escalation.
Yes,
movie
3
was
evil
Nightmare.
Superman.
Right.
Yes,
like, his whole thing was, because you see this in BVS, it's the first of the 2 dream sequences that then amounts to Flash showing up and saying, I'm too early, right? He was so obsessed with this alternate timeline and he's made this clear now, but Warner Brothers shot it down. The thing was supposed to be that Batman slept with Lois Lane. And then Lois Lane...
Say cucks. Batman cucks Superman. That was his pitch. Yes.
Right. And then Superman goes apocalyptic, and it creates just a horrible hellscape for everybody. So that's what he was working towards. You see that in BVS, and then I think he just was like, well, I'm never going to get to make my other 2 movies unless I leave people salivating at the end of this one.
It's a grand play. I mean, it does make sense. It's like he knows the movie is finished, so he tacks on truly the next time on the end of, like, it really is.
It's a teaser. He ends
the
movie.
Lex Luthor sequence, and then the dream sequence of the future, and then the Martian Manhunter saying, like, by the way, Bruce, great job. See you later.
When was that Joe? Because I remember Joe Manganiello. There was like a post that maybe Ben Affleck
they established in the Whedon one, and they established Deathstroke.
Right.
Yeah.
It's different a little bit in this one.
It's weird. There's a lot of examples of this in the movie where, having watched the 2 cuts pretty close together, too close together. There are a lot of examples where it's like, oh, this wasn't reshot by Whedon, but they just chose different lines from the same scene. Like,
or they ADR different responses.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know, but it is like the dialogue in the Manganiello Eisenberg ending in the Whedon cut is entirely different, but it clearly wasn't reshot. That one, the whole buildup is it's time we build a league of our own.
Yeah,
and this one, it's Batman's Bruce Wayne, go do the business.
Yeah, and we should, and Madonna from A League of Their Own is in this scene. And
she's, by the way,
and she's good.
And Lex Luthor is really like, good. There's no crying in villainy.
Yes.
He says that. Right. It's true.
I will say that Red Letter Media did this thing that I loved, where they were breaking down Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And in the trailer of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the Indiana Jones, the Shia LaBeouf Indiana Jones movie, he's like, Shia LaBeouf, like, in the trailer, yells up to Indy, like, you're a teacher? And he looks down really badass, and he's like, part-time, and then in the movie, he says it like, part-time. Like, it's like the trailer has the better delivery of the line that you're like, yeah! And the movie, it's like, and you watch the movie, you're like, wait, why did you pick that? You had it. You have it. And that's what this movie feels like. It's like, well, you had it, right? Why would you go over here?
That's the most surprising thing, is when you watch it and you're like, oh, they had all those pieces. It's not like that was a thing he reshot. They just chose the worst takes and the worst lines to keep in. What was I going to say though? You have the Eisenberg Manganiello thing, which was shot at the time by Snyder,
Right.
And then the other two prologues were the two things he shot new for this. Now, I did read an interview with him where he said that his original plan was he wanted to be Green Lantern at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And it was first he wanted Ryan Reynolds, Hal Jordan.
Yeah.
And then that was just like a non-starter. So then it was, I want a different Green Lantern. I'll work with Warner Brothers. We can pick which character it is and who's playing them. And they went along with it for a while and then said, J.J. Abrams is going to do this big Green Lantern HBO series. We want to keep that clean. Can you change it? So the Affleck side of that was shot with the assumption that they would film a Green Lantern later or do it with CGI.
My understanding is he shot a Green Lantern
with a gun.
And then he shot a Green Lantern with a gun.
But he was drinking
and he
heavily
said,
at that
"Fine, if I can't do Green Lantern, nobody can do Green Lantern."
But wait, my thought was, and why I really liked the final end reveal of the Martian Manhunter and how they see it in the beginning is that character has been established throughout all of the Zack Snyder films.
He's in Man of Steel, right,
which felt to me like, oh, well, that's way more interesting that Martian Manhunter has been here affecting,
this whole time. Sure.
You know, like I just feel like that was maybe one of those happy accidents because it makes the movie look way more complete.
He shot the thing with Lois and Martha during the original shoot and had storyboarded that when she walks out turns into Martian Manhunter. And then that was cut even before he got pushed off the movie. Like that they never did the effect. So he was able to salvage that and the seeds had been planted. Yeah.
Here's my big question to you guys though. Look, I think everything we're saying here, this movie is 4 hours long. I think there is a 3-hour version of this movie that is theatrically viable, right? Obviously, Warner Brothers is never going to release a 4-hour movie, but you can. This movie is full of sequences that you would horse trade with a studio where they're like, can we take out the Icelandic folk song? Yes.
No, you can't.
Look, I'm not
David,
saying like
no.
Okay.
David, how dare you? That's like my favorite part. My favorite part of the movie is like the Icelandic dirge.
Look,
she smells the sweater.
Can I keep 4 of the 7 slow-mo sequences? 4 of the 7.
But just like that's what I was gonna say. Speed up any slow-mo just a little bit.
You save 30 minutes right there.
Yeah.
He speed ramps within slow-mo. He will speed. He'll go anyway. Sorry, go ahead.
Here's my question. Okay. So every time Aquaman walks out of the ocean, like when he rescues the guy off the boat, right? He rescues the guy off the boat, he brings him in, and he throws him on the table. Aquaman is wearing a shirt. Where did he get that shirt? Because then when he
doesn't take off his boots.
Then when he walks out, he takes it off
always
and jumps in the water.
Yeah.
So he's got an opportunity between jumping on land to grab a shirt that he's only going to wear while he's on land because then he got to get rid of it. He does that twice.
He's got
in
like
the movie.
drop boxes all across the planet.
He's got like
shirt piles.
He's got shirts because he doesn't leave the shirt there and be like, "Hey, I'm going to pick this shirt up later." He tosses it into the ocean.
Yeah.
The girls, the women of the town take his shirt. They take it like
They sniff it.
They sniff his sweater.
I mean, maybe they place it in places. But I guess my thought is, what would you rather have on, a wet shirt or wet boots? Because just kick the boots off. Like at a certain point, like you're walking in. I mean, I know it's rocky there. I will ask this about, because we're kind of picking some parts of it. Do you believe that the cameo in the Aquaman world was intentional? I believe it was, and the cameo I'm talking about is the drummer from the fire battle, and I'm talking about the octopus. The octopus got a nice close up in this, and last time we saw him, he was playing the drums, and this time we. I did
much like in The Little Mermaid, how Sebastian the Crab, the court composer, is a crucial member of like policy making. It seems like the drumming octopus in the Aquaman world.
David, I'm not going to let you get a plug in for the recent Blank Check mini series.
It's just occurring
about
to me,
the
that's all.
Disney animated films, including Little Mermaid.
A hot crustacean band,
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing I want to bring up that is an odd. We talked about like bad choices. Amber Heard in the Whedon one, no accent. Amber Heard.
This is bizarre. This is
Amber
bizarre.
Heard in Aquaman, no accent.
Yes. What?
That's the thing that pushes it over the edge. Like, I was trying to do the math on this. I'm like, is it possible she shot it with a British accent? When Whedon came on, he was like, she should be American. They ADR'd it because the footage is shared largely.
Yes.
Between
they must
the
have
two.
ADR'd it.
And then when Juan makes his Aquaman film, they're like, well, the one that got released, she had an American accent, so let's go with that.
Look, I will say this. I think her dropping the accent was the right call. I think she
I agree.
is
I agree.
more comfortable in the part with the American accent.
Yeah.
Defoe doesn't have an accent. There's no world building where we're saying it's like Star Wars. The Imperials are. That's for the most part. That is, they're played primarily by British actors. With some exceptions. But there's no the Aquaman world doesn't have that same kind of thing.
No, it ends up being a funny Star Wars thing where it's like, why does Princess Leia have a British accent for that one scene and then never again?
Yeah.
Where it's like this weird remnant of like, it's so bizarre.
Let's talk about this epilogue too, because I know we keep on dancing around. So this epilogue, he takes. This is again what I think is the master stroke of this movie, where he says, I think Zack Snyder says, hey, the character that is universally hated the most in the DCU? I'm going to put him in this movie and make him palatable. That to me felt like the biggest fuck you. It's not a fuck you to Joss Whedon. It's a fuck you to, I don't know, it's almost like I am the rightful heir. It's like he has come home to roost by putting Jared Leto in this thing and directing him the way he does and giving that scene between the two of them.
Let's say, though, this is fundamentally, for all intents and purposes, a different character, right? Not only has he so thoroughly changed the look of this character, got rid of all the visual stuff, which is the easiest stuff to clown on.
An evil club owner or whatever. He is
but also
he's no longer covered in tattoos.
Right, he doesn't have the damaged in the grill and shit.
He doesn't look like he doesn't look like he's a DJ at all.
Right, and Leto's has a different energy. He's doing a different voice. It feels like Snyder going, I'm going to just reset and give you another chance to play the Joker. Is there anything you want to do differently?
He saves Jared Leto in this whole mix. He goes he's like, I'm going to bring you back in my rebirth. I'm saving you. It's a very selfless act in a way.
Yeah, it is dangerous.
Can I ask you guys a question? In that scene, in that team up that we see in this dystopian future that for all intents and purposes would have been, I'm assuming, the next movie. Mm-hmm. And you can tell you can tell how on board Ben Affleck is for the potential of what could have been, simply because he shows up for all of this reshoot. Yeah. He commits to doing all of these extra days to just shoot this stuff. Anyway, when they kind of run through that team, and Deathstroke's on that team, and Joker's in there, and so it
British
is
Mara.
It is, it's a Suicide Squad-esque, yes, exactly, a group of heroes and villains. Was that Flash Ezra Miller?
Yes.
It was. Okay.
He just has he has his time travel armor.
That's the costume he wore in Batman v Superman, right?
That's how he looks in that weird dream sequence where he comes back.
That's
to
what
Warner.
I wanted to make, because I was like, are they intimating that this is a different Flash? But okay, that makes sense. That's fine. Okay.
Wait, this is the question I was kind of wanting to ask. Say this movie comes out in a 3-hour cut. It's this movie a little chopped down. That's all. I'm sorry about the Icelandic folk song, Jason, but I'm just saying, Zack Snyder's
That's
Justice
still
League.
your cut, David?
Oh, look, well, just give me a second here. Comes out in 2017. I think this movie would have gotten fairly bad reviews, and
I think it would have flopped. I think it would have had a similar box office
done
performance.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that people in 2017 would have been like, no, we don't like this tone. We already told you, you're doubling down on it. There would have been a little more pushback. It's setting up a future apocalypse. Then the Flash is going to have to travel through time to save it, which is something Marvel literally does, right around the same time with their universe. I think people would have rejected it. I think the time, the sort of Snyder weird kind of transformation into an underdog Same with Affleck. Same with like a lot of the people in this movie. Like people kind of have come around on Henry Cavill a lot more.
The Ray Fisher stuff, obviously.
Yeah,
Yes.
like
there's just a lot of rooting for this movie. Yeah,
exactly. It's so crazy.
But I went in also going like, I'm not a fan of. Like, I did not like Batman v Superman. I watched Justice League. I found it to be boring. Like, and we picked it for this podcast before it came out because it was like, it will be an interesting conversation on whatever, like on this level, or
Good,
if it was
bad.
terrible. Right. But so I guess I'm saying is like, I did go in maybe leaning more towards critical, less towards, like, I was like, how could this possibly be good? How could it be good? But then how I saw it was good. I agree with you, though. I don't think this hits in the theater, but it's like I didn't
in
go
2017.
In 2017,
yeah.
Here's what I'll say. I'll say on top of that is, yes, 2017, 1 year into the Trump presidency, like not even like, are we gonna want this dystopian worldview? And the answer is categorically no. We don't want like this. I think the only reason any of us are reacting positively to it at all is simply because it's an improvement on something that was legitimately unintelligibly very bad.
The framing helps this movie in so many ways. Not just when we're seeing it, how much emotionality has built up in multiple different storylines of people working on the movie, the warranted Whedon backlash, like all these sorts of things. But also, it's literally, I just think the way he presents this movie, the fact that it's on HBO Max after a year of lockdown when we all haven't seen movies, which is one of the only reasons I really think this movie got to be made in this form.
100%. They had a multi-million.
Right, that they were like, we need to drive subscribers to HBO Max, and also we can't produce that much. We're willing to put $70 million into something that will function like a blockbuster. Whereas before, I think we would have been lucky if we had gotten a release that was more like the Richard Donner Superman 2 cut, where it's like, oh, we're giving you an indication of what it could have looked like, but none of this is really finished.
Yeah. What I feel like, though, is inside, whether it was in 2017, right now you're right, we're all predisposed to look more favorably on this. In 2017, I would have been so disappointed because for me, this doesn't look like my understanding of the Justice League. These are movies like it's what's absolutely categorically true in all of these instances is every time they are showing Themyscira, it's fantastic because Zack Snyder's style works because it looks like 300.
Yeah.
It works so well in that hand-to-hand armored kind of individualized combat. And once they get into all of the cities, all of the destruction, all of the death, all of the grief and mourning. Once all of these characters are killing people, they are responsible for near genocides. These are the characters are so dark, dystopian, and suffused with his Ayn Randian kind of nihilistic worldview that like I didn't want it then, and I'm certain I wouldn't have wanted even a coherent 3-hour cut of this. I would have been like, yeah, the movie made sense, but I didn't enjoy it.
But let me offer this. I think we also, and again, the 2017 version, I agree with everything we were saying, but I also believe that I don't know, and this is a weird thing to say, and jump on me if I'm saying it the wrong way. I think you can be a great filmmaker who also is better served in a world like HBO Max. Like you don't have to, and there's something about that where I'm like Damon Lindelof doing The Watchmen, like he could only tell that story on HBO. I love The Watchmen, but that's not a movie, right? Like, and this is not a movie. It is, but it's
not. The framing also helps with literally putting in like the chapter titles, having it be so egregiously long, putting it in a weird aspect ratio. Like it does feel like all of this stuff is sort of laying out the track of like, you need to view this differently. This is the very weird specific analogy I kept on thinking about watching this movie and being so surprised that I was sort of being won over by it. And I do want to say, I mean, to Jason's point, like a thing I just categorically hate in this movie is just how fucking gray it is. Like watching the Whedon cut, I was like, this is the absolute worst execution of more what I would want a Justice League movie to be versus this movie, which is like the best execution of what I don't necessarily want out of a Justice League movie, but I have to respect it more. And you look at like the original trailers for Justice League, the color timing is right in the middle. And then when Whedon came on, brightened everything, saturated the colors, and then when Snyder took back over, it went back down to grayscale. I hate that Steppenwolf is gray, that all the parademons are gray, that most of the team is gray, that they fight in an underground like pipeline that's gray, and the final battle happens in a city that's gray. Like it's just
right. Whereas the Whedon movie, it's a city that's red.
Right. Like
and Superman puts on a suit that is black.
Right,
black with a gray.
Why would you
S.
change that? Why would you change that fucking suit? Like, why would you put it? Like, it's such a great moment, and it speaks to the character. I like all these characters more, but again, I think it all just goes to. He is telling a large-scale HBO miniseries. He's telling a different thing.
Not for nothing, they're about to release a black and white version of the Snyder Cut.
Once again, I'm sort of just like, I guess that's better. Like, I just want him to go all the way with all this fucking shit.
Do your thing. Like, I think they're trying to, like, Warner Brothers. It seems like Warner Brothers is putting people in a box, and what they have found is
a mother box.
Is that it doesn't work. It's like when you put let Todd Phillips make his Joker. You didn't want to make that. It gets Academy Awards. And I'm not talking about the quality of that movie or whatever, but you want to, you make your Aquaman. You let everyone. And I think Margot Robbie, as much as is it Kathy Yan who made Birds of Prey?
Yes.
Like, I think Margot Robbie is so held on to that character as much as I think they take control, and they're like, this is the story that we want to tell, and everything starts to feel like there's more ownership, and that's when Marvel works. Like, Marvel works with ownership. It doesn't work with, this is what Marvel's doing, we need to copy this, it needs to be 2 hours, it needs to be that.
This is another framing thing that I think helps this movie a lot now versus watching it 4 years ago, right? Which is DC has, I think, very wisely decided their approach is, we're going to do the anti-Marvel. We cannot do this unified thing. Yep. What we're going to do is anything goes. We'll have 5 versions of the same character between TV and animation and movies at the same time. It doesn't matter, right? Like, let's just own the variety of these characters, which it's a thing like... It's like comic books. Right. You go on the shelves and it's like there are 4 different Batman titles. They're all written by different people and different artists. And one of them's for kids and one of them's like a Vertigo title or whatever. Yeah. Like, do that. Throw caution to the wind. I think I was bummed out with these Snyder movies when they came out because I was like, these are going to be the versions of Superman and Batman for a generation. Aside from the fact that it felt kind of like gatekeepy to make these versions of these characters that are fundamentally not for kids, right? Like, that are so in your face, like, this is intense. Right. This is not for fucking kids. And not only that, I wish it was rated R. I fucking resent you babies.
I think you're really right.
Out. That's the bummer with, Batman v Superman is like Batman and Superman are responsible, are murderers.
Right. And they're
Batman and Superman are straight up murderers.
They're also like sad assholes.
Yes. And they are all of them confronting the issues of adults.
Right.
They are all confronting the issues of adults or God.
They're also movies that feel like fundamentally they would be boring to children. Like, it's not just that this is above them.
Or scary.
Right, but now you watch this like 5 years later and you're like, well, this is Zack Snyder's Justice League. This is not taking up any real estate. It's not
the variety is making it maybe that's what it is. Like, we have now accepted that you can have the hilarious Harley Quinn animated show. Right. You can have all these things that so funny and great that can live. Yeah, maybe that is also the case. It's
that's
like,
huge for me.
This is just going to be like Zack Snyder. Like, and I think what happened was, and maybe for better or for worse, like Zack Snyder's vision was influencing Suicide Squad, was in like everyone had to buy into this world, and the minute they broke with that, they've had success. But you can also live in Zack Snyder's world, but he's not the Feige because there isn't a Feige. There doesn't need to be a Feige.
That's the other thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's more diversity in how these characters get represented in different mediums. He's no longer claiming squatters' rights over I get to be the only person doing Superman and Batman and everything. And then the second thing is the movies have broken out of this so much that you're like, this is no longer casting a shadow over everything. If Shazam can exist and be that cartoonish, then I don't care if Snyder makes his movies this bleak.
Right.
But the thing I keep thinking about is I have a friend named Christopher Compton who has been writing this like fantasy universe since he was like 10 years old. It's what he would write in school when he was bored. And it's like all like his whole life experiences, relationship to his parents and stuff. He's just been working on it for like decades, right? And once a year, he'll like have a party during the summer. I just follow me here for 5 seconds, where he like stands in front of a captive audience and he tries to explain the universe as much as he can. Right? And people go like, so who's that person? And he goes like, okay. And he's like chain smoking, right? And he's sort of like gesturing like there's a map. And I got invited to one of these once, and I said to my friend, like, this thing's fucking amazing. He has to write a book. And it's like, it's impossible. He can't do it. This doesn't exist in any linear narrative form. This is this like wide-ranging sort of like idea that
So
he's
it's
had.
an oral history?
It's an
I
oral
love this.
history of a universe that doesn't exist. And fundamentally,
Amazing.
the only form it can exist in is this guy in a backyard chain smoking, trying to conquer like 10% of it. Like every time he does this, only 10% of it gets covered. And it's decided by what people are asking him to focus on, right?
Oh, I love this.
And there's a purity
that's
of it where you're
amazing.
just like, the only way this can exist is in this form. There's no way you could wiggle this into
What's
a book
George
or
R.
even
R.
a book
Martin?
series.
It's or like
Right.
it's like it has to be like it has to be this explosion over multiple books and
Right.
thousands of pages and you know it's even like you know Tolkien with the like you know the Similarion or whatever
Yeah,
that you
and
know,
this
it's like,
movie is the same thing where it's like it's still only 1/3 of the movie he wanted to make at twice the length of what DC wanted for one movie. And the thing doesn't really function like a movie. It doesn't have traditional narrative propulsion.
Well, I mean, did any of us watch it straight through?
I could not.
no.
I did, but I
Really?
zoned out for the last 45 minutes and then rewatched
Every
them.
time there was a chapter break, I took that opportunity to stop, go do something, whatever, come back, start it
I
again.
fell asleep. Sometimes I started watching it late at
fell
night. I fell asleep, but I fell asleep because there is like I was watching it late at night. But like it does, I think, require like a reset, and I think those breaks are in there for a reason because
Yeah.
it can get like I know this is like I'm saying two things out of the side of my mouth. It's like it can get numbing at a certain point too because it is like
Yeah,
it is a
for
sort
sure.
of. But I think the refreshing. When I watch it more like what you said, Jason, where I took breaks in between chapters, I was like, oh, I can enjoy this 40 minutes. It's basically enjoying like 3 40-minute movies, and it feels incredibly digestible that way, but almost insurmountable in like, okay, more slow-mo, more this, more music, more that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the one thing I want to bring up to you all is what I have found a little bit on our How Did This Get Made Discord, and I made a post about the Snyder Cut, and I found this to be true as well. This is a 50-50 movie. People love it or they hate it. And I want to acknowledge that other percent, people who probably already tuned out by this point, but the hate for this movie, this Snyder Cut film is real. Like, and I want to also remember, like, how do we even like, I don't know if I totally get it.
Do you feel like that hate? I mean, I'm curious because I haven't looked at it or anything. But do you feel like that hate is basically hatred towards why we have the Snyder Cut, more about how the toxic fandom kind of
I think
needled and cajoled and threatened and bullied its way into getting this movie released,
This-
or is it I watched this, I hated it?
Like, this is like, people hate the introduction of the Flash scene.
Oh, see, I was blown. Okay, so that's a perfect example of, I was blown away that they took that scene out. The introduction to the Flash. Also, I want to, because David has it as his background, so I want to call it out. This movie fully rips off the idea of pocket dogs that I pioneered on the TV show The League.
Yep.
The Flash takes a hot dog out of midair, puts it in his pocket for later, i.e. a pocket dog. You're welcome, Zack Snyder. I guess you can steal from the best, but that scene is such a good incredible set piece to introduce us to this new character. I was blown out that they took it out.
You've got also Kiersey Clemens as Iris West.
Was amazing as Iris.
Right.
Yeah, very nice little performance.
Who is now coming back, right? Because, there were
She's
two news
cast
stories
in the
last
Flash
week.
movie.
She is coming back for the Flash movie, but Crudup is not.
Weird.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what happened there. Yeah. But what I was going to say is here's a great explanation of why some people hate this movie, right? Snyder is just so specific in what he does. It's one of the reasons I rewatched Dawn of the Dead this last week, because that's very much my favorite movie of his. But that's the one movie where it's it's a James Gunn script. It's got all this James Gunn in it, and he was very much a director for hire, trying to show off and do a snazzy job, but it's not a movie that's in the same way as, I would argue, pretty much every other film in his filmography, so reflective of his worldview and all of his aesthetic interests, right? And I just feel like when you make choices this specific, it's going to piss some people off, which it generally has for me. I just go this guy's not my flavor, right? Mm-hmm. But you get to a scene like that, which is really good in and of itself, is really kind of elegant character development, introduction, but you can start pulling apart threads of just and this is a thought I kept on having. The guy fucking loves slow-mo, right? He just thinks everything looks cooler in slow-mo. He cannot resist but use it anytime.
He also uses snow-mo.
He uses snow-mo as well. Which is when he puts snow into the movie.
Snow.
Yeah,
there's just inexplicably snow inside of the set pieces.
Right.
Yeah.
But you realize okay, strategically, if you've decided that the way you're going to visualize the Flash's powers is that he goes into slow motion, right? That everything is slowed down around him, you have the lightning, then maybe don't use slow-mo the rest of the movie. Maybe that's the visual language you've decided on.
Yeah.
That's the visual power set for this character. Maybe you can't do it every time Connie Nielsen fucking takes her sword out.
Well, then what you have then is essentially what, and they cheat it, but any sequence that has slow-mo as a part of it, in which the Flash is also inside that sequence, I believe the Flash should appear as though he's either at a complete standstill or he should be invisible.
Yes.
Yeah.
He should appear to be actually at a complete standstill because of the double combination of the visual language of the Flash is slow motion and the language of the film is slow motion. So it should appear as though he's just standing stock still.
But that's why it is easy to hate this movie, because you start pulling at any one thread like this and it all just kind of completely falls apart.
Right.
Well, it's like that idea that the Atlanteans can only talk to each other if they create an air bubble around themselves so that they can use their vocal cords. Wait, what?
They
which
they dumped for Aquaman wisely. There's stuff like that that they dumped for. There's this moment I saw it sort of going around on Twitter, and it is hilarious when Superman returns. Snyder cuts to the cop pulling his gun. Wait a second. Where I'm is your plan? One, why are you pulling a gun? Two, your plan is to shoot Superman?
You literally are the security guard guarding Superman's memorial, so you would arguably know more about Superman than anyone. So you also understand that he has these powers that are pretty amazing.
He has people make choices every step. Every character makes choices that are so. When Joe Morton, like when he and Cyborg are having their kind of back and forth, and Joe Morton is like, "Don't you understand? I've given you all of this power. I've given you all of this access. There's so much you can do. You've barely scratched the surface of what you could do." He says, "You have access to the entire nuclear arsenal." I was like, "Wait, what?"
Okay.
Why? Wait,
this
Joe
is-
Morton, why did you do that?
Why?
You should not have.
You have an angry teenager.
Kid,
Yeah.
this kid is very unstable right now
Put some
based on what
fucking
you've put him
parental
through.
locks on there, Joe.
Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
speaking about like losing a shirt and putting a shirt on, Cyborg is dropping that sweatshirt off and on. Like, how many Gotham sweatshirts does he have? Hoodies does he have?
There's a sequence in this movie that if you're talking about this as being a 50-50 thing, where Cyborg sees a poor family in need at the ATM and uses his cyborg powers to give them money. And I've seen people say, like, this was one of my favorite parts of the movie. I love that this was included. And I've seen people say, like, that was so dumb. What the hell is going on in that sequence? And I kind of came down on both sides, where, like, on one side, I just generally liked, obviously, that this movie actually gives Cyborg an arc and lots to do. And like you say, he's kind of the heart of the movie, and his whole relationship with everyone is very crucial. But at the same time, I'm also like, wait, he can redistribute wealth? Are we? Yeah. Why even care about Steppenwolf? Just work on that. Right. Don't even go to fucking Moscow or wherever. Wait a second, Cyborg. How powerful are you?
Yeah, it really does. It makes us understand, though, that, like, I guess what we're to understand is, like, he's still just a teenager.
Right.
And so he's like, you know.
He's dipping his toe.
Are you saying that it's easier? Well, the movie says it is easier for Cyborg to redistribute wealth than to fix Batman's plane.
Correct.
Because that one takes a lot longer.
Or to fix a personal tape recorder.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
There's stuff, but then there's stuff like there's an arc for Batman's gauntlets in this movie, a whole arc.
Oh, my God.
Spanning hours of the movie. There's stuff like that I kind of have to applaud the 4-hour maximalist ridiculousness of that, but I can also hop over the line and be like, that's dumb. You know, like, I can see both arguments on this.
Here's another thing. He puts 2 Nick Cave songs in the movie, both of which have lyrics that seemingly describe what is happening on screen. Like, I remember reading a Scorsese interview where he was like, when I pick a song, it's about adding something that the scene isn't otherwise communicating. And then this movie has a scene where Lois Lane is going to the memorial site for Superman, and the lyrics of the song are, "They said the gods would outlive us, but they were wrong."
Well, I guess, like, do you think that because he's comes from a music video background, that he is going, I want this Nick Cave song, and then writes to the Nick Cave song, or does he do, like, because he's not writing.
He's a needle drop guy.
He's a needle drop guy.
Like, and he's a corny motherfucker. I mean, this is one of the reasons why it's like, you really got to reckon with his work. It's either like very much your thing, very much not your thing, or you got to do what the 4 of us did, which is really try to work with it. Because
I am a 50-50 Zack Snyder guy. Like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And then
I'm out. I'm hard pressed to find a Zack Snyder movie that works for me.
I like Army. I like the zombie movie. I like a lot of Man of Steel.
I do too.
You know, especially the first half of it is really very good. And then
I like
this.
Yeah.
And I like 300. Like, those are those. If those are like my
300.
I don't like 300.
Like,
I saw it once.
None of those work for me.
I'm not going back to 300. I wonder if I went back and saw it now, what I would feel. I think it's the Avatar effect, which was like the first time I saw Avatar, I was like, whoa. This is cool in 3D.
Yeah, Avatar rips.
Well, again, I'm going to be the lone dissenting opinion that is like, I'm pretty sure I couldn't tell. Like, there isn't a movie has a starker difference between box office or cumulative money made and like invisible cultural footprint.
David and I talk about it.
Oh, this is a movie that doesn't exist
constantly.
Right. Is it right?
His newborn
Isn't that what you guys say?
baby, a baby Navi onesie, so he can dress up his daughter like a baby Navi complete with tail.
But did you have to buy a real one or did you have to make one of your own?
I bought it from the Disney store.
The Disney store. Like, by the way, I've been to Navi at Animal Kingdom.
It's the best.
There's more. The puppets they have on the show.
Pandora? You've been to Pandora?
Yes,
the world
I've been to
of Pandora.
Yes, world of Pandora. And it was, by the way, one of the best amusement park rides I've ever been on in my life, compared to one of the worst.
Yeah.
Speaking of also like the corniness of him, I will say that the character I probably have the biggest issue with is Flash. Flash to me feels to like a character that is like, I feel like it's a non-funny person being like, this is my funny character. And at certain points, it's a little bit too much. But at the same time, at the end of the movie, I kind of felt like I have a hard relationship with him.
I think it's hard inside of this movie, which is, to be very clear, humorless, dour, sullen, grief-ridden. Every character is dealing with essential traumas that have happened to them. Every single cut, when they cut to another character who has experienced loss or is in the midst of a personal catastrophe. Every single one of them, right?
Yeah.
And so when Ezra Miller really is the Flash is the only his dad's in jail, which is bad. That is a trauma for killing his mom. But he, at the very least, they try and structure him like he's a kid. He, in the Snyder Cut, there's a girl, and he has barely used his powers.
He's trying to get a job. Right. I mean, they're simultaneously, they're putting so much on this character. Because, like, the Flash is the only, A-list DC hero who is funny, I would argue. Right? Whereas a lot of the Marvel characters are funny. And DC,
I'm sorry, Hawkman is hilarious.
Well, but that's like if you get him at a bar at 3 o'clock in the morning, he's funny. He doesn't say that shit publicly,
Behind closed doors, Hawkman is the funny guy.
Right, but they're like DC characters like Booster Gold and Plastic Man who are funny, but they're outskirtsy. Right, the gods are very solemn and self-serious. Flash has always been the one character that's kind of funny. Ezra is the only actor in this film with any sort of comedic background, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I feel like they're simultaneously putting the weight on this one character to both be their Spider-Man and their Tony Stark, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's just overstuffed. And like sometimes the character strains from them putting all of that. Like you need to be the fun, emotionally relatable
And I think that Whedon tried to do that for Momoa. I think Whedon tried to like create this other version of Aquaman that was like less of a loner and more
Party
of like
dude.
Yeah. And that was not successful.
Well, and Whedon's Flash is like a coward he's like too scared.
He needs to be coached through the set pieces from what I remember. Right?
Yeah, in the set piece, he's like, I can't do this.
Right.
And they're like, and Batman has to be like, save one person.
Right.
And he's like, what do you mean? Just save one person. And it's like,
Right, and then
well, no.
God, that movie fucking stupid.
It's so dumb, but it's no, but it's really true. It's so dumb because it really takes agency away from the Barry Allen character because, we've seen him participate. We've seen it. He's capable.
Right, the introduction
he
in
might
this
just
movie
be green.
is him saving one person. And then in the Whedon cut, it's an hour into the movie, him saying, I don't know how to save a single person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that there's something about like, it's tricky. The Whedon cut has like 2 sequences where they're describing what they're going to do when they get to Russia. And this movie, obviously way longer, but I understood what they were doing in a much cleaner sense in this film than I did in the Whedon version of it, where it was like also like, I don't know. I mean, just to say,
it's like the Whedon version's building popsicle stick bridges in order to cut out 40 minutes in between 2 points. Like, can you, Joss, can you write one scene that enables us to skip over all of this?
Oh, yeah. And the Snyder Cut takes that 40 minutes that Whedon cut out and makes it 90
doubles
minutes.
It. Yeah.
Right.
He doubles it. And he shows you how everybody gets to every location, like literally.
Right. And if you if you hate Snyder, which like I'm with Jason, where I was like predominantly out on Snyder, and now I feel like after this and rewatching everything, I've begrudgingly come to like a 50-50 state with him, where it's like I gotta just respect the thing he does, even if it's not my thing, to a certain degree. But I do feel like if you don't like him, it feels incredibly oppressive to watch 4 hours of this.
I wonder if these weren't characters that I do know. I wonder if these were just movies.
That's another thing for me.
If I would find more enjoyment out of them, if these were just stories of gods and or whatever, like clearly,
original,
let me be
yeah.
Let me be clear. Like Zack Snyder is an incredibly compelling visual stylist. You know, like he's not a bad filmmaker. I don't like his worldview or his point of view, and so the movies don't tend to resonate with me. But I still like them. It's like he's straight out of the Christopher Nolan school of impeccable filmmaking, but inside of it, like Tenet for me felt hollow, you know, but so gorgeous to watch. I loved watching Tenet, but I was like, what story did I just
Sounds like you
watch?
could use a temporal pincer movement.
A temporal pincer movement? Oh,
Yeah.
brother. That's speaking of another speedster.
Look, here's the thing I've been thinking about with Snyder, with his 3 DC movies, because I like a lot of Man of Steel. I love the Krypton stuff.
Yeah.
I struggle with certain things in it. I still don't really understand why he couldn't rescue Kevin Costner from a tornado. Like, there's certain things in that movie where I'm like, I get that you're building to a moment here, but I can't handle the logic of your
Confounding story
screenwriting.
decisions in that movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And Batman versus Superman, which the ultimate cut or whatever it's called does improve. I agree, Griffin, but still, that movie is about people making really stupid decisions constantly. Like, because Batman has to fight Superman. So you're kind of watching both Batman and Superman be dumb. And you're like,
Right.
will you guys just have a conversation, for crying out loud? Like,
Right.
you can figure this out in 2 minutes. And instead you have to do all this bullshit. And then Martha, like, you know, it's like
That movie only works if you view it through the prism of, I'm supposed to hate both of these characters.
Right. And then in Justice League, no one is stupid. That is my point.
No.
Like,
Right.
there is no longer anyone burdened by ridiculous plot contrivance. It's like, look, guys, we got to come together. There's a Steppenwolf. You know, like, it's a much simpler thing.
I feel like he got the note after Batman v Superman. It all,
Yes.
like in a way, like, and I don't know, like, obviously you said it was like shooting very quickly afterwards, but on set even, I feel like they made some choices that when he shot it, that helped make things make sense. I will say I was confused when, like, I get Superman fighting Wonder Woman and Aquaman and even the Flash sequence is awesome. Like, that sequence between Superman and the Flash, so cool. But when he fires his laser eyes on Batman there, what has he got there that's going to protect his arms from
gauntlet.
He's got power.
Gauntlets.
He's got power absorbing gauntlets.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
Sorry.
Jeremy Irons
you're
made
right.
them for him.
So I guess I missed that detail, and now when you said gauntlets, now I'm pulling it all together.
You might have been sleeping.
The one thing Whedon added that I think was logical is that Whedon adds that it is an active decision to bring Lois into that scenario to calm Superman down, whereas in the Snyder cut, she just kind of is hanging out, and then when he sees
She's
her, he's
in the
like,
neighborhood.
Oh, hey. Right, which just that feels like classic, you know, script polishing thing where Whedon's like, well, why this should be an active rather than a passive decision. That's the only change I noticed. I just wanted to shout it out. It's different between the two cuts.
positive.
Where I'm like, I think the theatrical
it
cut
makes
kind
sense.
of cleaned that up.
I wanted to read this quote that I thought was interesting. So Joss Whedon just talked about why he added in the family, because we could argue that the family in Russia is one of the biggest things that Joss Whedon adds in, and so Joss Whedon says, for him, the most important thing is, for what is it like for the people on the ground? That's always going to be important to me. Like, there's Hawkeye helping people off the bus. You have to have someone who works on ground level who's taking care of the smaller stuff. And he's talking about this as far as like what he added into Age of Ultron, which is very similar, which is like they have a lot of helping people.
And the Sokovians, right.
Yeah. And so, he said, like, basically he brought that Sokovian attitude into Justice League because he felt like he's like I shot 3 days just tracking civilians on the ground because I wanted to see, like real devastation. But I also like at a movie this big, I don't care about it. Like, I don't care about it.
Yeah, it's a thing I agree with conceptually that does not work in execution at all. And perhaps if you were designing that to be part of the movie from the ground up, it would work. But in its form, it's just like, this is so clearly shoehorned in.
It works in The Boys. When The Boys is built around that idea on some level, right? Like a normal person who's been affected, or even that like one shot that Lizzie
Kaplan, the Marvel one shot. Yeah.
The Lizzie Kaplan did. It was like, oh, well, this is interesting. Like, this is like, but you almost need to that's an island. It's not like at the climax, I feel like. That's the problem, in my mind.
Well, the thing in Batman versus Superman that I like is that opening sequence where you're seeing Man of Steel from the ground, and it's this sort of like apocalyptic 9/11 thing, and that's where Ben Affleck, the Batman, is getting so mad, and you're like, okay, this is very powerful. But then most of that movie is Lex Luthor being like, I heard Superman doesn't like you, and Batman's like, what? I'll punch him. Like, you're like, why is Lex Luthor getting over on you like this?
It's literally like, it's like gossip. It's high school gossip. It's absurd. But I agree with you. The extended cut of Batman versus Superman, just like the Snyder cut, proves that if you give Snyder a long enough, give him a long enough runtime, the movie will just make more sense. Right. And it will trick you into thinking it was more satisfying. I think.
Right.
I think
you put more time in.
I think it's a magic. I think it's a magic trick. Right. You give it more time, but it makes more sense. So when you look at it, you're like, well, I understand it at least. Like when I watched the original cut of Batman versus Superman or the Whedon cut of Justice League, partially what's so difficult about those movies is there is an inherent tension based on what is missing, making the movies not really make sense. The movies are asking you to do too much work. And as a result are unsatisfying. And these, because they're doing more work for you, feel more satisfying, and you mistake that you can mistake that for them being better, and they are just better constructed. But like I said before, they are better constructed, like brutalist architecture. That like if I saw it in Russia, I would be like, wow, that's an impressively that's an impressively solid concrete slab of a building.
Serious. Yeah, but it's like
but you know what I would love? More windows. I would like more windows to let more light in. I don't want to live in that building. And that's what it is.
The buy-in on this thing is huge, right? And it essentially asks, like, you got to just check your reservations at the door. You got to be pot committed. Because you ask, like, Paul, why do 50% of people hate this? It's because if you're not really giving it a chance and you come in with your, like, my general distaste.
You don't have to.
Right.
You do not have to.
No one has to. But it's like, if you're coming in looking at it askance, you will find 15 things a minute that just boggle the mind. Like in the sequence we talked about where Cyborg starts to see that he can manipulate the financial markets, the like pretentious self-seriousness of Snyder combined with shit like he feels the need to visualize that by showing a CGI bull
Oh my God!
Wrestling a bear, so you understand.
He also does the same. Doesn't he also do the same? Does he do the same for like political parties or something?
There's a lot of weird imagery in that background. Although I did like the way that you got into his mindscape. But then I would also say that there's a way that he treats these characters. And look, I am more of a Marvel person. I probably in my DC world, when I was a kid, I read a little bit more Superman. Then I really read a lot more Batman. And so I can't speak to the character of Wonder Woman. I will say this. Watching that opening sequence of her in the bank, that I thought was an awesome sequence. Like a very cool, better than anything in Wonder Woman 84. Like that mall sequence and like if that was whatever, I liked that sequence. I did find it confusing that she does murder them. She does murder all those people and then goes up to that kid and goes, well, you can be whatever you want. It is like, oh, my understanding of Wonder Woman is not that she is this kind of a murderer. But again, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
But I think in Zack Snyder's universe, they all kill.
Right.
Yes.
Like they all kill in this world.
Right.
Like that's part of the language of, I mean, like the you know, and that is what, again, if you're playing by the rules inside of Zack Snyder's universe, then I agree with David what you were saying earlier. The opening of the extended cut of Batman v Superman, which is this, like the movie opens with like 10 minutes of what might as well be raw footage of September 11th.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It is
Affleck
so
driving around Metropolis is being ruined.
driving
by
around
Superman and
Metropolis
Zod.
in a Jeep,
Yeah.
in a very product placement Jeep, while tens of thousands of people are dying inside of the buildings that are being destroyed
Right.
by the Kryptonian fight between Michael Shannon and Superman.
Yeah.
Right? Michael Shannon? Isn't it?
Yeah, Michael Shannon played himself
And so-
in those movies. No, he didn't play Zod. He played himself.
Yeah. No, he didn't play. Yeah, that was the secret. Everybody thought he was going to be Zod, and he was just Michael Shannon.
Michael
Well,
Shannon.
yeah, even more intimidating, honestly.
Yes, exactly. Terrifying.
But
Yeah, his superpower comes from the stage.
that's the thing, though. It's like, as much as he has this sort of like complicated big picture vision of the thing that cannot be reduced to a tidy 2-hour package, Snyder for me is fundamentally a filmmaker who thinks about what is the coolest thing I could do at this moment.
Yeah.
Whether it's a story decision, a visual decision, a tonal thing, whatever it is. And he doesn't really care about those things butting up against each other in a way that sort of works against itself, you know?
And I mean, in a weird way, he's saying, I think, you know, as Marvel is exploring the multiverse, we're on the precipice of that opening up in a much larger way. And I think Flashpoint, the Flash movie that they're making with where Michael Keaton is coming back as Batman, it looks like DC is opening up the multiverse, and the way that they're going to be, I think, tying all their worlds together is by saying anything can happen. There's multiple worlds and all this sort of stuff. I think that Zack Snyder kind of is re-inviting himself into the party and going, this is where my multiverse is this. I'm going to exist in this world where I can live by my own rules and it can look cool. And that's, I don't know. I think it's a very interesting, I think you're right. I think it's like his ideas, like
They could have a version. There could be a situation in the future where Zack Snyder makes the Knightmare
Yes.
movie. And it's just, we're out, like at a certain point, if Flashpoint kind of gives us the multiverse, then we have the opportunity to not have there be a status quo.
Yes.
Like the Snyder's thing can be in just Snyder's thing. It can be, everything can be siloed in its different universe, and they can mix if they want, I guess. I don't know. I'm curious how they're gonna approach this. It could be very interesting.
Well, now he's already talking about a sequel. This is the Monday after it's been released that we're recording this. And he's already saying, well, now, yeah, I guess people want me to make a sequel. And so that might be something that we see.
The thing, I never would have predicted that this thing would exist. When the first, Snyder Cut talk started, I was very much like, there's no such thing as a Snyder Cut. Sure, he may have had an assembly cut of a movie, but like, that's not the same thing. And I never would have predicted that Warner Brothers would pony up $70 million to let this thing drop on streaming, essentially. I would never imagine they would have to pony up an additional $300 million. God knows how much fucking money you would have to pay to get Affleck back, Cavill back, but never say never, I guess, at this point has to be even though like Ray Fisher is calling for like CEOs of Warner Brothers to step down, and like Ta-Nehisi Coates is writing a Black Superman movie for J.J. Abrams, but like it still could occur.
All these things can exist.
Yeah.
And I guess like the way I feel about it is, regardless of how you feel about Zack Snyder in this film, I think I'm going to butcher this name, so please, all of you are much smarter than me. What's that movie? It's Kona Kwatsi or
Koyaanisqatsi.
Yes. You can view this movie like you can view that movie, where it's like, just sit back.
Right.
Wait,
listen,
do you mean stoned?
I mean,
do you mean stoned?
honestly,
you should view it stoned?
But in a way, yes. In a way, like, just like if you take your functioning brain off and just want to look at like some purely beautiful visuals, see some things, like, I think this movie does work on a base level, just like, I think it could be. I mean, I felt that at certain points it's kind of swept up in it too.
Well,
Like,
and to follow Jason's analogy, it's almost like you gotta just kind of respect brutalist architecture, even if it is not your thing. So maybe just like walk by it, take a look at it, go, huh, that is wild that someone wants to make a building that way, and that this much work was put into constructing a building that way. And then you think to yourself, glad I don't live there or work there on about my day.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
Like, this is not, these are not movies that I will ever return to the way that I return to. There are Marvel movies, like I have rewatched, Thor Ragnarok. I've rewatched the Spider-Man, the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. I've rewatched, there are so many superhero properties, never mind, Into the Spider-Verse and some of the animated stuff. But, like those are movies I go back to over and over again because they vibrate at the frequency of superhero storytelling that I'm interested in watching in a way that these Snyder movies do not. Does that make them bad? No, it just makes them not for me. You know what I mean? And that's fine. I they make more sense now that I've seen these longer cuts. The storylines line up in a way that if he did make another one that was this Nightfall, kind of dystopian future or a nightmare or whatever, this dystopian future, I'm curious. I'm also curious for a movie in which the new gods come to Earth. There's I like Kirby. Like, I want Darkseid. Like, I'm curious. Like, there's something there. I just am always like, man, Zack Snyder stuff just doesn't hit me right.
If you don't like Italian, we're not saying don't put an Italian restaurant in my neighborhood.
Whoa. Are you about to say something like offensive against Italian?
Who are you?
No, I'm just saying,
Mike the Spoon Man Mitchell?
2 hours
What is
in.
this, the Doughboys? Is this a Doughboys episode?
We night slice in here?
I guess what I'm saying is like, but
Are you Mr. Slice? Mr. Slice, rather?
I'm combining all of his
I just think that there is a thing where,
The
unfortunately,
Night Spoon and Mr. Slice.
Night Slice.
Night Slice.
Night Slice.
Which is my new Chris Terrio scripted, Zack Snyder produced HBO Max miniseries.
Oh my God.
But I guess what I'm saying is this. It's like my whole opinion on this is, I think unfortunately Marvel has set I love Marvel. I love what they're doing. I'm on board. But I think they have set an unrealistic expectation for what superhero movies are, what people expect from them. I think you can see that in the Sony films, not to say that the Sony films are perfect, that they have done, but it allows very little. I think that people view them as anything different as being bad. Where I think what we need to do is go. We need to expand this thing. But Marvel has created the template, and I think when you break the template, it's very hard. And I think
what Marvel has done beautifully is made movies that feel like comics.
Right.
Like the Marvel movies feel the most comic books.
Like going
in
to the store every week, keeping up with a naughty, expansive universe where characters cross over and meet each other and blah, blah, blah. That is what they have replicated
that the
for movies.
Yes. But that the movies and characters are differentiated from each other in tone, in style, and in performance. Like they're not all doing the same thing.
Right.
Just the way that if you pick up a Thor book, if you pick up Jason Aaron's Thor, and you read
and you should,
which everybody should
amazing.
read Jason Aaron's Thor, drawn by Isad Ribic.
I never liked Thor before Jason Aaron took over Thor.
Oh my God! You read that book and you're like, I'm reading something incredible. Then if you pick up Nick Spencer's Spider-Man, totally different, subject matter totally different, and nonetheless incredibly compelling.
But
Marvel gets that. Go ahead, Griff.
Key difference. Marvel has never let anyone make anything as individualistic as one of the Snyder movies. Right. That's the thing. It's like, we'll make these different from each other, but we're never going to let someone go that far
at the end of the
in their own
day,
direction.
it is, and what I think works really good for Marvel is Kevin Feige is the gatekeeper of all things Marvel.
He's the showrunner.
Yeah, and we've seen when it hasn't worked, which is Jeff Loeb and everything that has come out of the Netflix Marvel world, and it's like those were I think, disappointing to Marvel fans, and I think it was disappointing to some of those characters. And it's like, yeah, well, let the person...
Wait, have you talked to some of those characters?
Sorry.
Have you heard from those characters?
Iron Fist?
I talked to Iron Fist. He was very
Was
upset.
Danny Rand like, Paul, I would love to talk to you. I should have stayed in Kudla.
But I mean, you know what it is? I just think it's like you look forward to those characters and you waited for the Marvel, like I think especially with Daredevil, and I think people relate, but I love Jessica Jones. But it's like it was a very hit or miss thing. And I think Marvel has said, I think more successfully than any franchise ever, we got this. Like we will give you at worst a B. You like, you know, like a movie can come in and it's like, it was fine. Like, and then, or, you know, maybe a B-. Like, you know, it's like, but I think they're getting less.
Thor the Dark World is like a straight D-.
We're on the other side of that one, Jason. Hey, look.
This I will never understand.
It's its own episode. You can have it sometime. We can have the
but we'll come on Blank Check.
I would love to talk about that. But I would like to rewatch it. But I guess what I'm saying is, and that is cool, but everything doesn't have to be that. Like James Bond isn't that. Like James Bond gives it over to different people to take over and drag. I just think there's room for all of this.
Yeah,
you know,
I have totally given up any sort of preciousness about IP at this point because that's what it is. It's fucking IP. They're going to keep on milking this stuff over and over again.
It'll
and not
never
only will they reboot it every 5 years, but they'll do 4 versions of the same thing at the same time. And to Jason's point, like, I love the fucking fourth world stuff. I would love to see a gonzo, banana pants, bright, colorful, goofy fourth world movie. Ava DuVernay is supposed to make this movie and is writing it with Tom King. My fear watching, you know, this, the Whedon Frankenstein version in 2017 was, man, is that fourth world movie going to have to fit into this version of Steppenwolf and even the parademons and this kind of grayscale shit? But now I'm just like, if he gets to do his fourth world stuff and someone else gets to make a fourth world movie that's silly, you know, I don't care. Like, let everyone do their own thing.
And you know, look, and there will always be opinions, which is why we're going to quickly get into some second opinions.
The movie was a piece of shit, yet this person recommends it. Tell me what is the message? Maybe that art is subjective. I need a second opinion.
All right, so these are second opinions that are from the Joss Whedon cut. These are 5-star reviews of Joss Whedon Justice League, which I wanted to bring up because there are some good ones. These are all culled from the Amazon.com. Nate Kiley pulled them, and here we go. Okay, this one's written by Fan Out West. Do not hesitate to buy this movie and enjoy it. Unlike the Zack Snyder films, the cast actually looks like they're having fun making it. In my opinion, the cast of Marvel movies look like they're worn out and tired. The mustache that was removed via CGI is very short and not noticeable if you're not looking for it. Jason Momoa is off the hook as Aquaman, and Ben Affleck's Batman is great. Yes, I said it. Ben Affleck is a great Batman. Don't listen to Dirty, Rotten Tomatoes. They haven't been right about a movie in years. And if you don't want to have fun watching a movie, then throw The Arrival or Grand Budapest Hotel in the big old Blu-ray player and bore yourself silly.
Wow.
The big old Blu-ray player? Do I have like a jumbo one for the Grand Budapest
Dirty
Hotel?
Rotten Tomatoes?
Yes.
There's so much good stuff.
That's the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels sequel we need.
We should work on that.
Arrival and Grand Budapest, notably well-received films that also were commercially successful, both entertaining in very different ways. Like they're not
not
one
similar.
film is serious, one film is a very goofy, like madcap caper.
Yeah, well, this is a 5-star review, and it ends with this line here. It says, Warner Brothers, hire some Disney PR people and give us JL2 and bribe yourselves some critics. If the Mouse House can do it, so can you. 5 stars. Then we go into this one. This is written by Mark. Great story. Extremely well executed by cast and crew. I hate Lex Luthor. Is that wrong of me? I think not. Zack Snyder has always been great at putting it all together, but I also love Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch. Why doesn't someone kick Lex Luthor's butt. I don't mean a superhero. I mean a regular dude. Catch him in the bathroom. Have him slip on a bar of soap a couple of times. 5 stars. Just took that time to say he wanted to beat up Lex Luthor. And then I'll finally end on this one. This is by Thomas Lernahan. Should have been shelved by the WB and DC when Snyder could not finish the picture, rather than allowing another person to take the reins who had no business in the DC universe. While I do not like what Snyder was going to do with some of the characters, overall this movie was pretty good. 5 stars.
A twist?
So, a real twist there at the end. So those are some 5-star. There has not been enough reviews here about this one. But any final thoughts, guys? I mean, we really talked a lot. I think a lot about. We didn't break it down in the things because I think you're right. This is a movie that can be literally torn apart on every level if you're not buying in on it. And if you are, I think it's a pleasant surprise, or at least that's why I feel. And who knows if it's perspective or the history, or I don't know.
I thought, just a couple things. Like, I thought Amy Adams just, has so little to do in this movie.
Third build.
Wow.
I mean, Cavill's second build, for crying out loud. So
Yeah, so
I
brutally.
think that's probably like how the order in which they got into the
seniority.
franchise.
Yeah.
Right.
But I thought she's great. She's so watchable
always
and she's
good.
so great.
She's good.
People are giving performances that are very good in circumstances that are, I would assume as an actor, very
And
bad.
by the way, I want to just call out one of my favorite moments in the movie. I just looked at my notes. Force majeure, the pregnancy test.
yeah.
What a great prop design there. Force majeure.
Incredible.
Really.
I
And
hope
so she's pregnant.
Yeah, she's pregnant. They're gonna have a baby. I hope that force majeure pregnancy tests become like Zack Snyder's Red Apple cigarettes, that they remain
right.
a product in
love
every
that.
movie from here on out.
That would be incredible. It is hard for me to imagine that we live in a world.
A society, say it. We live in a society.
That we live in a society in which Diane Lane is Ma Kent and Marissa Tomei is Aunt May. Like, this is like, I don't even understand how we've gotten to a point where the older moms are the hottest women on earth, and I'm here for it.
It's also
right?
funny that like Diane Lane is almost going full opening of Edward Scissorhands. Like they put so
Yes.
much gray on her. She's like doing an old lady voice. They're like, Diane, you gotta be less hot. Anything you can.
You have to be less vivacious.
You can't make Diane Lane not hot, by the way.
You
They
can't.
failed.
She is
But I
so
thought they did a
so
great,
compelling.
I think they did a great job of like her and Kevin Costner were a very like they were not like what you would like.
They were great.
Smart casting.
They're just like
Yeah.
they just look like like these are like they weren't just like they had a life to them. I like Kevin Costner in that film as well. I mean, even though his
I think
picture only
he's
makes
great.
an appearance.
Yeah, I do
right,
too.
yeah.
Now, on the flip side of that, J.K. Simmons is announced as Commissioner Gordon. Everyone goes, "Oh,
my God.
that's cool casting." He shows up in Whedon for one scene. You're like, Jesus, why did they shank J.K.
Yeah.
Simmons this hard? All this J.K. Simmons stuff must have been left on the cutting room floor. You watch this movie, the exact same amount of footage.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah.
I think Ray Fisher said that's the only footage that was Snyder shot that's in the
Two
other
scenes.
cut. Yeah.
I feel like
Would
he.
that
And by the way,
include Cyborg?
Snyder. Yes,
You've got to figure that he was just going to be in the Batman movie substantially.
Yeah.
But
Right.
that's,
You know.
I think what they were doing was what you all have been saying, which is he was trying to build 10 years very quickly. So it's like, let me just drop these things. Like I'm seeding the world. And so, yes, I'll cast a big name person to come in for one scene, knowing that it will pay. Like he's, I think, doing it the right way. So it's not a bunch of recasting. And it was like, Kirstie Clemons clearly is going to, I mean, now she's not, but was going to be a part of the
No,
world.
she is again now.
Oh, she is.
Oh, she is. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
she
I got
is
you.
again
Okay.
now. It was like it's gone 4 different ways, but as of
So
this moment,
wild.
she's back in the movie as the female. lead.
Okay. So that's okay. So interesting. God knows.
It's all weird.
It's all super weird. All of it is as weird. All of this is as weird as the fake upper lip on the Whedon Superman.
Absolutely.
I will say one thing too. One time when I was directing something, I was doing a scene around a table, and I was trying to figure out oh, how can I shoot this in an interesting way where the camera's moving because there's a lot of exposition and dialogue. And I was like, I will have the camera spin around the table. And I did like 2 takes of it, and I was like, this is nausea-inducing. Like, I can't. This is not going to be good. It will not cut. It's going to look like shit. Zack Snyder really embraces that spin around the table to a point where I was dying laughing at how much we were like, it was like a merry-go-round. We were around that table a lot. Like, it was like, that's it. He's committed to that directorial choice. And in a movie that is so slick, that did stick out to me as being a little bit bizarre.
He makes weird choices. The dude,
there's a goofiness. Yes.
He's got weird taste. And at the end of the day, when we're talking about like, well, you have to buy into this movie, either you're going to love it or you're going to hate it. It's like, I think all 4 of us are appreciating this from the exact same perspective, which is, what a weird thing that this exists. What a bizarre history to get to this point. Having it at this state in such an expanded object is such a curio. You kind of have to view it on a very different, through a very different prism than any other movie you've ever watched. And you're sort of holistically taking in all the baggage along with actually considering what's on screen.
Well, not for nothing, the fact that all of us rewatched stuff simply to give context to it is significant. You know, like,
never
this
intended
is
to rewatch any of those movies.
No.
Guys,
I was excited to watch Joss Whedon last night. I was like, all right, here we go. Let's get into it.
This is like, we are all like, these are the stories that we're all like pulling apart and trying to find meaning in, some combination of all of these characters and all of these scenes. You know, there is something about this that is it's very interesting and compelling to talk about. But again, I'm hard pressed to think if I would ever watch any of these movies ever again. And I suspect the answer is no, unless called upon in something like this to do it. Like these bring me no joy, but I'm deeply curious.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like so compelled by the story surrounding the making of this story, I guess.
I agree, but I also could use a break, I will say, from the whole Snyder Cut
agree.
and the whole superhero movie discourse. I could use a half an hour.
We did it. We
you know what I mean?
Guys,
okay.
Guys, I have breaking news.
Okay.
I want to break into the pod. I have breaking news. Vin Diesel's son has been cast in Fast and Furious 9 to play Little Dog.
It was down to me and him. They went in a different direction, but it was down
Griff,
to the
how did you not get this part?
I worked really hard. Ultimately,
is that why your head is shaved right now?
Yeah. Ultimately, I think he had a little bit of an in that I didn't.
You know what? But that is this makes me so angry. I mean, and now I don't know if you guys know this. I am part of the Fast and Furious family now. The animated world of Fast and Furious.
Motherfucker.
What?
Yes, on that show.
I am one of the characters. I have a very small part, and I believe 2 episodes of
Spy Racers.
Spy Racers.
Exactly. Yeah, Spy Racers. And
oh wow!
So I'll talk about it more when I can. You know, I don't want to. Again, I don't look. We're in a moment of mourning for Griff here. I don't want to rub anything anywhere.
I should also mention one more piece of breaking news. Ann Cernoff, who is in charge of Warner Brothers, did an interview that just came out today. And they're sort of asking her a bunch of questions about, like, where does this go now, this and that. And she was throwing out dodgy answers. And then she finally says, I appreciate that they love Zack's work, and we are very thankful for his many contributions to DC. We're just so happy that he could bring his cut of the Justice League to life, because that wasn't in the plan until about a year ago. With that comes the completion of his trilogy. We're very happy we've done this, but we're very excited about the plans we have for all the multidimensional DC characters that are being developed right now.
And Griff, as you were talking, I also want to read one more quote from that article. She also unequivocally says there will be no David Ayer cut of Suicide Squad.
He's trying to leap on the bandwagon. He's trying to be like, look, they edited my movie to death. Where's my release the Ayer cut? And some people are like, oh, release the Ayer cut. And I think she's trying to be like, no, this is not a precedent setter.
Right,
this is an anomaly. Like, we're not going to be releasing cuts willy-nilly on HBO Max, okay?
I would like them to I would like them to release my cut of Dirty Grandpa.
I would like to see that. I would like to see it.
Guys, it's been fantastic to have you on the show. Obviously, we want people to listen to Blank Check, which is a great podcast. But individually, anything we want to plug?
Blank Check. This week we're doing our year-end awards episode, and then we're starting a little mini-series on the films of Elaine May.
That's right.
I'm incredibly excited about that.
April is May.
Paul and I are both listening to the Mike Nichols audiobook right now.
It was one of the best books I read. We actually had Mark Harris on Unspooled to talk about Mike Nichols, and it was great. That book is fantastic, and now I want to dive into Elaine May as much as I have been diving into Mike Nichols. So.
Rad movies.
I'm very excited.
That was very fun miniseries. Yep.
The George Lucas Talk Show with Jason and Paul and David have all been on multiple times.
Yeah.
A very odd, hard to describe show I do with the great comedian Connor Ratliff, where he plays George Lucas and I play Watto, the Tordarian junk shop owner, and we interview real people in character.
And it has its own mythology. Twitch. It's on Twitch.
Yes.
Right?
It's on Twitch.
Right.
It's Sunday nights?
Sunday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, planetscum.live.
Okay, planetscum.live. Jason, anything you got to talk about?
In a week, I will be in a new Amazon animated series as we're talking about superhero stories. Robert Kirkman's Invincible is coming out.
Oh, I'm so excited for that.
It's great. It is a 1-hour superhero, brutal, incredibly cool, incredibly fun, funny, faithful adaptation. Kirkman himself scripting, an incredible cast. If you've read Invincible, it's J.K. Simmons, Stephen Yeun, Sandra Oh. It's like Gillian Jacobs, Zazie Beetz. It's like an incredible list of people, and I play Rexplode, guys.
Cool.
It's very fun.
That is the best.
That is
very
incredibly exciting. And I will just quickly mention that I am in 2 things that you can check out. One is on Netflix. It's called The Last Blockbuster. It's a documentary about Blockbuster Video, and I am blown away by the amount of people who have seen it. And if you are a fan of this show, I do talk about my Jamie Gertz experience, and she reached out to me, the girl who I play the fake Jamie Gertz in my autograph signing, which you can hear about in the documentary.
Funny.
So she reached out to me, and this movie that I did called Happily, directed by Ben David Grabinski, is out on VOD right now. It's super fun. Joel McHale, Carrie Bechet, Kirby Howell-Baptiste, Shannon Woodward, Charlene Yee, John Daly, so many people, Stephen Root. It's Twilight Zone meets Couples Retreat Weekend, and I think you will like it. So there's what I got. A big thank you to our amazing producer, Cody Fisher, our sound engineer, Devin Bryant, of course, our movie picker who we sidelined this week. I told Avril, I was like, we're just going to go and jump into this. She's like, you haven't even seen it? I was like, I know, but we're going to do it. But Avril, great movie picker, producer, the best. Also, Nick Kiley for his research and being able to break down the entire trajectory of this film. A big shout out to the ghost of Craig T. Nelson and Kyle Waldron for doing all of our art. A giant shout out to Molly Reynolds, who is my right hand and also a big part of How Did This Get Made and getting this show made all the time. And if you want to talk about this movie, you want to rebut anything that we say, you can do it. You can give me a call at 619-PAULASK. That's 619-PAUL-ASK. We'll talk about it there. And you can join our Discord at discord.gg/HDTGM. Whew, it's all there for you to talk about in our mini episode next week. We will see you later. Bye for now.